another caller. شراكة متميزة لدائرة الهجرة وبرنامج صباح الخير ميشيغان. تابعونا صباح يوم الخميس في الأسبوع الثالث من كل شهر تماما في 48 مواضيع هامة تتعلق بآخر مستجدات الهجرة مباشرة مع مسؤول من دائرة الهجرة. شراكة متميزة صباح الخير ميشيغان دائرة الهجرة. خليكم معنا. ضمن شراكتنا مع دائرة الهجرة والجنسية في لقاء هام كل يوم خميس الثالث من كل شهر تمام 8:30 صباحا بتوقيت الشرقي للولايات المتحدة الأمريكية. على الهواء معنا مباشرة من دائرة الهجرة كلا من الضابط ماريلو كابريرا وأيضا الضابط دان كوزوكوف. المقابلة سنحاول أن نذيعها لكم مصحوبة بترجمة فورية قدر المستطاع وحسب ما يسمح به الوقت. Good morning, Officer Cabrera.
Good morning, Layla, and it's just me today. Of course, I don't understand, but I did hear Dan Cosgrove, and he's not joining us today, so it's just me.
He's not available. Okay, well, you're so welcome all the time to join us, Mrs. Cabrera, and thank you so much for all the valuable information you bring to the program every time. Mrs. Cabrera, I know that we covered the TPS before and asylum more than once, and we're still receiving questions from newly arrived Syrian and who applied for TPS or asylum. Some of it seems to be basic, very basic, but the need is great to educate them, and thank you so much for coming up every time to answer those questions to benefit generally most of the who send us those questions. I would like to start with a question about applicant who if a person applies for asylum, can they apply for TPS as well, Mrs. Cabrera?
They can apply for, because it's completely two completely different benefits. One is permanent, the asylum, and of course the TPS is temporary. So, they are able to apply for those two applications at the same time.
Okay, Mrs. Cabrera, before we're going to talk about the benefits, I wanna make sure to let our listener understand this. Is it going to be any delays if they chose to apply for both of them in the same time? I mean, one and another. Is there any conflict between both of them to apply? Hello? Okay, do we have a caller here? Okay, we're going to wait until Officer Marilu Cabrera join us again. Sorry for this. We have a little bit problem in our connection here in the studio, so we hope that she's going to call again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Fine, thank you, Madam Layla. I'm Dr. Ahmed Keishur. We have spoke together before. First of all, I want to thank you so much for this great program. You are doing a great job.
Thank you so much, sir.
For the Syrian especially, and for the whole Arab community in the region.
I appreciate your support and your comments, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is the fact, because we have to thank you because you are doing a really great job.
Thank you so much.
My question is, why the last time they issued the TPS, as we know from our other friends, it does not take that long. Like now, it's now taking too much long. I have applied in the first of when they open it in the 1st of January, and till now I did not get either the fingerprints receipt.
Well, I think could you repeat your question again, please? I think Mrs. Cabrera, she's gonna listen to your question. If you can hold on the second, I think she's back with us on air.
Okay.
Is Mrs. Cabrera back on? Okay.
So?
Yeah.
I repeat the question?
Can you hold 1 second, please?
Okay.
Well, sorry for any inconvenience. We have Mrs. Cabrera back with us. I don't know what happened, Mrs. Cabrera. We lost you here, and thank you so much for calling back.
Sure.
I am really sorry. It's crazy here in the studio. We have a problem with our system phones. I don't know what's the problem, but we're trying to control it as much as we can. So we have a one caller, Mrs. Cabrera, and if you don't mind to take calls today, it's going to be general advice. If you don't mind, I mean, our caller here will ask you a question in relating to the TPS. Go ahead, caller.
Yes. First of all, is it taking for the TPS? Good morning, Officer Cabrera, first of all. Thank you for joining us and for your great effort regarding our questions and inquiries.
Good morning.
Good morning. Regarding the TPS, first of all, is it taking now in the 2015, the new redesignated TPS, is it taking too long to approve the cases first? Then
so is it taking... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Is it taking more time than the last TPS when they issued? Because our friends, when they apply for TPS last time in early 2013, it does not take them that long like now.
Well, I have not heard of any additional delays, and they already have TPS, so they're extending their TPS. Is that what you're saying? As part of the redesignation?
No, actually, I have applied for the first time in the early January 2015, and till now I did not got either the receipt for fingerprints.
And you applied when? I'm sorry.
January the 8th.
This
January the 8th.
Last month.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
And you have not been fingerprinted. Well, you know what? That doesn't seem to me, it's a little bit over a month now. You always have the option of coming into our office so they can look up your specific case. You know, every case is different, and you never know what might delay one case versus another. The best thing to do so that, for your own peace of mind is to come into our office, make an InfoPass appointment, and you can do that right online. If you go to the USCIS website, I don't know if you visited our website before, you may have, but right on the front page.
I have visited. I can make an appointment online?
You can make the appointment right online. I don't know if a lot of people realize it's very basic, but it's extremely helpful.
They don't. We spoke about basic information, Mrs. Cabrera. Unfortunately, most of our listeners, they need those basic information, and especially for the new arrival to the United States.
Yes.
Sure, we take it for granted, of course, but it's important information. InfoPass is what it's called. So you can make an appointment because really it's difficult to get through sometimes, I'll have to admit, through the 1-800 line. And if all you want to do is make an appointment, you want to come into the office, you can go ahead and do that right online. Are you in the Detroit area?
No, I am in Georgia.
In Georgia, okay. So nevertheless, you can go right on the website, uscis.gov. And, of course, we always have to make sure it's GOV, and look for InfoPass. I haven't looked at the website in the last week, but I believe it's usually right on the home page. And there you can pick a date. They'll have a calendar, and you can pick a date that's convenient to you and a time. And unless there is some sort of, unforeseen emergency in the office, they will generally see you right on time, which is a great convenience because you don't, if you're working or if you have other responsibilities, you don't have to take up your entire day as it used to be, just standing in line. So, yes, make an appointment, go into the office, because that will give you your peace of mind to know, did I not send in all the information, or is there some sort of delay for whatever reason? And at the counter, they can give you that general information to help you. Of course, when you come into the office, make sure that you bring some form of identification because they want to make sure, obviously, that you are the person that's on that application.
Great.
They want to be able to identify, make sure that your identity is correct and it's not somebody else trying to get information on your case, which is why. Mm-hmm.
Another issue, excuse me, for taking that too much long, regarding if someone is granted TPS, how much, if there is an emergency case and he has to travel, because now most of us, the Syrians, are having their parents and their grandparents they are in a very critical situation. So if there is some emergency case, can we get this travel document a little bit fast?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question because it's one that we had actually planned on discussing. So thank you for bringing it up. Yes, this is an extremely important topic because people, when they have TPS or when they're awaiting some sort of benefit, let's see, a permanent benefit that they don't have, let's see, their green card yet, but they've already applied, it's still very, very important to get that travel document. Do not leave the country without a travel document when you're on TPS or any other sort of, temporary status. So it is possible to, again, make that appointment for the travel document, the I-131. You can, as long as you bring in all the, you'd have to bring in the completed I-131 application, and then you would also have to bring proof of an emergency where you're traveling.
Okay.
So if you have, let's say, very ill relative, or for whatever reason it is that is a true emergency that you need to travel, bring that into the office, and they have the ability to review the case and grant that right there and then. Because otherwise, a travel document could take. I haven't looked on the website. You can also check our processing time.
Usually it takes around 3 months to
90 days. Yes. It's typically, it's been at 90 days for many years. So if you need to leave the country, over the summer, now would be the time to apply for a travel document. But again, we realize that people do have emergencies that arise, and so that's the way that you would do it. Make an InfoPass appointment, download the I-131, complete that, get your, of course, your identification, and then proof of an emergency, and come into our office. The I-131 application is $360.
Excuse me, just for making that clear. What does it mean? It's enough if it's a medical emergency case? For example, one of the parents are a little bit sick, and is it?
It depends, I guess, from case to case, Mr. Ahmed. Right, Mrs. Cabrera?
As all our cases, of course. Right, it would be very difficult for me to tell you over the airwaves here that your case would be fine and somebody else's wouldn't. Your best bet is you have an emergency that you feel is a strong emergency. Bring the evidence in of that emergency so that the officers can review it and make that determination.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was very helpful. Thank you, Officer Cabrera, and thank you, Mrs. Layla.
Thank you so much, sir, for calling in. Mrs. Cabrera, as you see, half of the time it is two questions. We're trying to help everybody and open also doors for our listeners to call in and ask you as a general advice. Of course, there is no specific advice for each case, as you mentioned before. Every case is different, but I want to make sure before I'm going to translate this for our listener, because this is very important and it came to my attention several times. Travel outside the United States. Can they travel to the country they ask for TPS or temporary protection status? Is the emergency in Syria? Do you think they can really travel with the document? Yeah.
That's a good question, Layla. Right. And, certainly you would think,
it's logically no. My understanding is logically no. How do you ask for temporary protection status and go back to the country you came from? I don't know, but you are the expert in general, Mrs. Cabrera.
Correct, and that's a difficult one to answer. Right. I would say that it's a case by case. So it has been. I would go ahead and apply if you feel that you have that true emergency and bring your evidence. Supply the information, and then the officer will make the determination.
Well, Mrs. Cabrera, also for the, I'm going to translate it quickly to our listener. عندما تتقدمون للحصول على الحماية المؤقتة TPS وأثناء النظر في الطلب يجب أن تأخذوا بعين الاعتبار إذا قررتم السفر خارج الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية أنكم تتقدموا بالحصول على طلب I-131 هو لطلب سفر تعلمون فيه دائرة الهجرة لماذا لديكم ضرورة لمغادرة الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية. ما هي الضرورة التي تستدعي ذلك؟ مع الأخذ بالعلم أن هناك فترة انتظار ربما قد تطول إلى أكثر من 90 يوم للحصول على الموافقة أو الرفض. كل هذا يتعلق بنظرة الضابط إلى الأسباب التي أوردتموها في الطلب. مع أخذ الملاحظة يعني أنتم طلبتم الحماية المؤقتة في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية نظرا للظروف التي تمر بها البلد التي أتيتم منها. هذا يستدعي منكم يعني أسباب قوية كي يعني لا تفقدوا حقكم في TPS أو الحماية المؤقتة إذا عدتم. وطبعا هذا يتعلق كله بالضابط المناط وعند نقطة العبور. Mrs. Cabrera, as a general talk and an advice to our listeners, if the emergency is not really so strong, do you advise or not to advise people to leave the United States based on those situations?
If the emergency is not what, I'm sorry?
Mm-hmm. If there is emergency cases, is not so strong, I mean.
Uh-huh.
As a general thought, because this question, it came to my attention, and I want our listeners to be very aware that maybe it is up also to the officer when they enter United States, how he's going to look to the reasons, or if they have the travel document, most likely it is no problem. This came to my attention right now, and one of the listeners just called in when you were talking to one of our listeners as well.
Uh-huh. Sure. So, I mean, no, this is meant for emergencies, but also, I mean, the advanced parole, I mean, when you come in when you have an emergency and you want it processed right away, that has to be a true emergency. You can't decide that you want to travel outside the United States next week and come in as an emergency. It really has to be a true emergency to have it processed right away. Advanced parole in situations can be granted just not necessarily an emergency, but if you file it, just 30 days before. I mean, that's fine. That doesn't have to be the true emergency.
Mm-hmm. Mrs. Cabrera, I do have another question from one of the listeners. I'm not sure if he's in relating to TPS or asylum, but he said if the person has a felony traveling outside the United States, is that going to be a problem? But I don't know what the situation is.
Again, I don't know the specifics, but typically that would be
a problem.
That could pose a problem. And so also the advanced parole may be granted with that, with someone. Usually, typically isn't, but if it is, the advanced parole is not always a 100% guarantee that you will be allowed back in, because if there is something that arises that is encountered that we find, then that person could be denied entry.
اوكي. الجواب لمستمعنا نعم ستكون هناك مشكلة، وطبعا الحصول على إذن مغادرة في هكذا حالات لا يضمن لك العودة. طبعا سيكون ذلك مناط بأي معلومات قد ترد إلى الضابط أثناء نقطة العبور. إذن الإجابة نعم. Mrs. Cabrera, also I would like to ask you about the fingerprints, البصمات. Some of our listeners really apply to TPS and they did not get yet fingerprints. Usually, how long it takes for a person after receiving a receipt to get his fingerprints as a general?
You know what, Layla, I'm not quite sure. I'll be honest with you. I don't know between the time they've received the notice to the fingerprint. I would have to check that, and I can do that within the next hour and get back to you.
Okay, so we can announce it. Do you think that's something a matter they should follow up on with the office if they did not receive it with a certain time, or it's normal? They can just wait.
I think it just all depends on the workload, and usually at the beginning of TPS it's very slow. People wait normally for the last minute. So sometimes that could be delay. I think we still have some time with the TPS. So, I mean, it all, and then again, it depends on the case. If, it could be a case where they still need to review some information, or it just could be a delay. And then I'm sorry to give you a non-answer, but I'm not sure.
No, that's very understandable. This is very understandable, Mrs. Cabrera. I'm going to explain it to our listener, and then when we have further information, approximately how long it might take, we will announce it to our listeners. So, الإجابة لمن يتقدم للحصول على الTPS وينتظر البصمات، من الطبيعي أن تتأخر نتيجة للضغط في تقديم الطلبات، يعني هذا متوقع جدا، لكن أيضا هو مناط بطبيعة كل قضية، يعني حسب المدة التي تأخذها فترة الانتظار والريفيو القضية، يعني التحقق من أسباب طلب الحماية المؤقتة. ربما هذا يأخذ وقتا أطول من شخص إلى شخص حسب طبيعة القضية. وطبعا المدة الطبيعية لهذا الموضوع ستعود إلينا الأوفيسر ماريلو كابريرا في هذا الموضوع بعد ساعة، وممكن أن نعلنها لكم في الأسبوع القادم. Mrs. Cabrera, times flies like this. يعني we don't have even time. I didn't have time to even go over all the questions. But I have if the person granted asylum, what is the benefit will get? Could you please remind them they will get assistance, medicals for how long? It's going to be, I think, my understanding, $800 for 6 months, and after that they should find a work. What is the benefit for them after they're going to grant the asylum?
Well, asylum is that part we would grant. Our agency will grant the asylum, but the benefits, are you talking about state or federal benefits? Those don't come from our agency. So that's not a question that I can answer. I really don't know. It would have to be whether it's probably you're talking state benefits or could be federal benefits, but outside of our agency. So we're solely in charge of the asylum, making sure that we do the background check on the individual, and then granting the benefit of asylum to allow them to stay in the United States, determining whether they have that fear of persecution. But outside of that, the benefits would not have anything to do with us.
So it's going to be it's for the state and federal. So we can
depending on what benefit, because each agency will be in charge of a different benefit. So depending on which agency is charged with that benefit.
So بالنسبة للإعانات التي يحصل عليها اللاجئ عندما يقبل لجوءه، الموضوع لا يتعلق بدائرة الهجرة والتجنس، ولكن يتعلق بكل ولاية، ويتعلق أيضا بالحكومة الفيدرالية. ما هي المخصصات التي طبعا ستعطيها إلى كل لاجئ عندما يقبل لجوءه إلى الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية، ونتواصل مع أحد المسؤولين لنعرف تحديدا ما هي هذه الإعانات التي يحصل عليها اللاجئ. مع أحد من ولاية ميشيغان نأخذه كمثال، أو من الحكومة الفيدرالية. Mrs. Cabrera, we would love you. I mean, we have less than 1 minute. I'm sorry, we have so much questions, and our listeners keep calling in here, and I am really sorry not to take any more calls. But I can please ask you if you can go back with us, hopefully for 1 hour, to answer more of the questions, and we will send you an open date. We do have, and hopefully you can find the time to join our conversation. And if we can have Officer Mick with us, and somebody from the State Department. I have so many questions in relating to also people that want to come from outside the United States.
We would love to participate in a longer program, of course. Yes, I feel like we just covered a couple of things, so absolutely. I'm more than willing to coordinate something. And
at this point, I would like to thank you, Officer Cabrera, for putting the time and effort to come on my show over years, and I really appreciate it. Thank you, ma'am.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye. لم يبقى لي إلا أن أشكر مستمعينا لهذا اليوم الذين انضموا إلينا وتواصلوا معنا. إلى اللقاء.